Lois Burdett's book series, Shakespeare Can Be Fun, is internationally renowned, and this Stratford, Ontario elementary school teacher has published 8 of these books to introduce Shakespeare to students for the first time. All written in rhyming couplets and illustrated by her students, as well as with some little letters from the characters as well that they have written. And these are all done by students between the ages of 7 and 11. And that's really exciting. And I always like to say that if a 7 to 11-year-old can understand Hamlet, then so can you as a high school student. And I just want to read a little bit from Kenneth Branagh's foreword here in the book. For many people, I am sure Hamlet is just a famous name. There may be dim associations with a man in black tights who spends a lot of time talking to himself and seems to have a penchant for skulls, but many will be in a state of blissful ignorance about Shakespeare's most famous play and will be unfussed by what 400 years of analysis, scholarship, and performance may have done to obscure the brilliance of the original. For anyone coming to this play for the first time, regardless of age, or indeed for those like myself who may be dangerously overfamiliar with the work, this book is a treat. Aside from Miss Burdett's lucid, funny, and evocative rendition of the story, there is the priceless contribution of the children. Here is a voracious thrill of that first excited, imaginative response to a great yarn. There are passionate reactions to the characters which they draw with real feeling, and comments on the story and the people, which are intelligent, moving, and very, very funny. Fun is the key to this book. It takes a cultural icon and makes you understand its power in an effortless and enjoyable way. So let's begin Hamlet for Kids by Lois Burdett. I have a story that is often told of a prince named Hamlet from days of old. His troubled mind we shall explore as I take you now to Elsinore. In this royal castle on Denmark's coast, nervous sentries keep watch at their post. High on the battlements the sentinels stare round. The biting wind is the only sound. For the past 2 nights they've seen a strange sight, a phantom ghost who stalks the night. Now, it's past midnight and close to the time when the clock tower bell will begin to chime. So let's join these men out there in the cold and watch this tragic tale unfold. Tell me, Francisco, Bernardo inquired. Have you had quiet guard? What has transpired? Not a mouse stirring, Francisco replied. Nothing in common have I espied. But a sudden sound made him draw his sword. Stand ho! Who's there? He loudly implored. Hamlet's friend, Horatio, strode into sight. What, has this thing appeared again tonight? A guard named Marcellus also came into view. Horatio won't believe what I tell him is true. Horatio laughed. You have nothing to fear. Tush, tush, he continued. 'Twill not appear. As Francisco departed into the night, Bernardo began his tale of fright. Last night, before our watch was done, just as the bell was tolling 1. But before Bernardo could further explain, Marcellus shrieked, Look where it comes again! In flashing armor and with stately gait, the ghost moved towards them at a steady rate. Bernardo trembled as he looked straight ahead, in the same figure like the king that's dead. Horatio did not leave his post. He was determined to confront the ghost. Who art thou, and who do you seek? By heaven, I charge thee, speak! But the shadowy figure would not obey, and with a glance, it turned away. 'Tis gone, breathed Marcellus. Horatio, you look pale. Is it not like the king in every detail? As thou art to thyself, Horatio spoke straight. This bodes disaster for Denmark, our state. But behold, look where it comes again, he cried. It moved majestically with arms open wide. Just then the cock crowed to signify day. The spirit was startled and faded away. The guards decided to interfere. Each lunged at the phantom with his spear. It's no use, Marcellus cried, for it is as the air, and will not listen to our futile prayer. Horatio knew what must be done. We'll find Prince Hamlet, it will speak with his son. Within hours of the sighting on the platform that night, the castle abounded with brightness and light. For though King Hamlet was just 2 months dead, his wife, Queen Gertrude, had once again wed. Her dead husband's brother had asked for her hand, and so Claudius became king of the land. Joy and happiness pervaded the air as the court celebrated the new royal pair. Young Hamlet ached with shame and disgust. He thought this marriage so unjust. He missed his father and was horrified. How could my mother thrust him aside? Now in his place stands a man I've despised. To marry my uncle was ill-advised. Claudius smiled as he looked at his wife. He had achieved the goal of his life. "We thank you for coming, each and every one." Then he saw Hamlet. "Come here, my son." Hamlet cringed in loathing and despair. This was more than he could bear. The king continued, "Why are you so blue? How is it that the clouds still hang on you?" "Good Hamlet," said the queen as she drew nigh, "thou knowest 'tis common, all that lives must die." "'Tis time," she continued, "that you adjust. Do not forever seek thy noble father in the dust." Hamlet replied, "You don't know how I feel. My pain these mourning clothes conceal. But I have that within which passes in show. These are the trappings and the suits of woe." The king was impatient. "'Tis unmanly grief. But Hamlet, I can offer you relief. Think of me as your father, and in Denmark remain." The queen added, "Let my prayers not be in vain." Hamlet muttered, "I shall in all my best obey." Claudius smiled. "Madam, come away." And so Prince Hamlet was left alone, lamenting for the world he'd once known. "Oh, that this too solid flesh would melt," he sighed. "It would be better if I had died. My father is dead, and my uncle is king by giving my mother a wedding ring. Within a month they married. Oh, most wicked speed! Frailty, thy name is woman. How could she concede? These strange events my soul have wrung, but break my heart, for I must hold my tongue." Hamlet paused, for he'd heard a sound. He rose to his feet and looked around. A man approached, his greeting to extend. It was Horatio, Hamlet's good friend. Bernardo and Marcellus were side by side. "I'm very glad to see you," Hamlet cried. He questioned Horatio, "What brings you here?" "The king's funeral," he replied, his eyes starting to tear. "I prithee, do not mock me," Hamlet bitterly said. "I think it was to see my mother's wedding instead." "Indeed, it followed hard upon." Horatio was contrite. "My lord," he continued, "I think I saw him last night." "Saw who?" Hamlet demanded, his face turning pale, as Horatio related each curious detail. For the prince, this was indeed an upsetting blow. "In armor, say you, Horatio, from top to toe. All is not well, that much is plain. I will watch tonight, perchance 'twill walk again. Between 11 and 12 I shall visit you." Then he bade them farewell, and they quickly withdrew. Hamlet reflected, foul deeds will rise, though all the earth overwhelms them to men's eyes. Now Claudius knew nothing of this new plan. Neither did Polonius, the king's right-hand man. In his job as chamberlain, he advised everyone, including, of course, both his daughter and son. "Laertes, my boy, as you leave for France today, I have some counsel I want you to obey. Give thy thoughts no tongue. Think before you act. Be friendly to others and treat all with tact. Dress as well as you can, but keep it low-key. Neither a borrower nor a lender be. This above all, to thine own self be true. Farewell, my son, my blessings go with you." Laertes bowed low. "I'll take my leave, good lord." Then he hugged his sister, whom he simply adored. Polonius turned to his daughter with further advice. This time, though, he was more concise. "What's between you and Hamlet? Tell me the truth. Ophelia, are you dating this noble youth?" His daughter replied softly, "I cannot disagree. He hath made many tenders of his affection to me." "Affection?" Polonius snorted. "Don't believe his pleas. He trifles with your love. He's nothing but a tease. There will be no more courting. You will do as I say." The poor girl had no choice. "Father, I shall obey." Evening finally came, and in the stinging air, 3 figures on the platform heard a loud fanfare. Trumpets and cannons marked the revelry of the king. Drunken celebrations were already in full swing. "Such drinking," Hamlet raged, "really is a crime. I'm cold and tired. Will this clock bell never chime?" Horatio's eyes grew wide. He trembled in the night. "Look, my lord, it comes!" It was a shocking sight. "Angels of grace, defend us!" Hamlet was terrified, but he swiftly took control, and his panic he denied. "I'll call thee king, father, O royal Dane. Explain why you have come. What do you wish to gain?" The spirit raised its hand and beckoned Hamlet on. "Don't go," implored his friends. "You are but a pawn." The 2 tried to restrain him, but Hamlet struggled free. "It waves me still," he cried. "Go on, I'll follow thee." Now the 2 stood together, royal father and his son.
"Mark me,"
The ghost shuddered.
"my hour is almost come. I am thy father's spirit, doomed to walk the night. At dawn I render up myself and disappear from sight.
The mournful voice resounded from above.
If thou didst ever thy dear father love, revenge his foul and most unnatural murder."
He cried. "Murder?" Hamlet trembled and looked horrified. The very word hammered in his brain.
"Murder most foul."
The spirit bellowed again.
"'Tis said,"
The ghost moaned.
"that a serpent bit me, and I died in my orchard in tranquility. Indeed, a serpent did sting thy father's life, but it now wears his crown and has married his wife."
"Oh, my prophetic soul!" cried Hamlet. "Can this be true?"
"Aye,"
moaned the spirit.
"the facts I will review. As I slept peacefully on that fateful day, your uncle crept towards me like a beast of prey. A poisonous liquid he poured into my ear, then he slunk away with a laughing sneer. It was a moment I could never have foreseen. My brother snatched my life, my crown, and my queen. Bear it not, my son. Set my tortured spirit free. Adieu, adieu, adieu. Remember me."
Hamlet stood alone and watched the ghost retreat. "Remember thee, I will. This challenge I will meet. Your command alone stands forever in my brain. I give my oath, dear father. You have not come in vain." Just then his 2 comrades pushed into view. Horatio puffed. "My lord, what did it say to you?" "The secret," uttered Hamlet, "is locked in my heart. I'm afraid you will reveal it. I think it's best we part." "Promise me," said Hamlet, "you'll never bring to light the unusual events that have occurred tonight. And if I pretend madness, and you see me acting odd, do not even hint you know the cause of this facade." He pulled out his rapier. "Take an oath upon my sword." The prince's wild behavior could not be ignored. "Swear!" cried Hamlet, and the ghost echoed,
"Swear!"
The final vows were taken in this strange affair. "Come now, my friends, let's go in, I pray." Then Hamlet paused. His look was far away. "The time is out of joint. O cursed spite, that ever I was born to set it right." Before long, it seemed, Hamlet had changed. The talk of the court was that he was deranged, but he was observing the king's every move. The murder he wanted desperately to prove. Into Ophelia's chamber he barged one day, his manner wild, his clothes in disarray, his doublet unbuttoned, no hat upon his head, his stockings were ungartered, and not a word he said. She rushed to her father. "I've been so affrighted." "I know Hamlet's problem," Polonius was excited. "Love's not returned has caused madness full-blown. Let's go to the king. This must be known." But King Claudius was not impressed. He was suspicious and most distressed. Claudius plotted. "What I need are some spies to sniff out the truth and become my eyes. From Hamlet's friends the facts I will learn. I'll send for Rosencrantz and Guildenstern." It was hard to tell these two men apart. Loyalty was not strong in either man's heart. They were delighted to receive extra pay. With the help of money, they were easy to sway. "Go now," ruled the king, "and visit my son." "Don't worry," they replied. "We'll get the job done." As the men departed, Polonius came with news, the cause of Hamlet's madness, and the telltale clues. "My report will bring relief. Since brevity is the soul of wit, I will be brief. Your noble son is mad. The facts you can't dismiss." Then he showed a love letter. "Take a look at this." "Is the note from Hamlet?" the queen asked with a frown. "Indeed," cried Polonius, "but Ophelia turned him down. I'll deceive him with my daughter, and my theory I will prove. We'll hide behind a curtain and observe his every move." Claudius replied, "The scheme I'll allow." Gertrude sighed, "Here comes the poor wretch now." Polonius whispered, "You should not stay. Away, I do beseech you both, away." Then he beckoned to Hamlet, who was reading a book, and approached him with a condescending look. "Do you know me, my lord?" his voice growing stronger. "Excellent well," replied Hamlet. "You are a fishmonger." Polonius was shocked. "Not I, my lord," he began. Hamlet groaned. "I wish you were as honest a man." Polonius shook his head. "He's far gone from reality. He has totally withdrawn." As Polonius departed with no more ado, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern hurried into view. Hamlet held out his hand and smiled with delight. "Welcome, good lads. What brings you here tonight?" But just as quickly his expression changed. He eyed them suspiciously. This was arranged. They tried to change the subject. "Guess who comes today? A traveling troupe of actors we met on our way." Hamlet was delighted. "They will be well received. But King Claudius and my mother are deceived." "In what way, my lord?" The two sounded distressed. Hamlet replied, "I am but mad, north-northwest, when the wind is southerly." He said with a guffaw, "I know a hawk from a handsaw." Before they could untangle this last retort, Polonius admitted the actors to the court. In colorful costumes they bounced to the hall. Hamlet cried, "Welcome, masters, welcome all. Come, give us a sample. Use your best techniques. Choose a passionate speech, a tale from the Greeks." The lead actor arose and began with great force. Emotion mounted in his rousing discourse. When the monologue ended, Hamlet took him aside. "Tomorrow night, could you act in a play I'll provide? The Murder of Gonzago is the one I submit, with a dozen new lines I've added to it." The actor agreed and went off to rest. Hamlet was alone and became more depressed. "Oh, what a rogue and peasant slave am I! My spirits I cannot seem to fortify. Is it not shocking that this player here with imaginary feelings can act sincere? And all for nothing! Oh, what would he do if he had my motive, my passionate cue? Am I a coward? Why do I delay? For 2 months now my plans go astray, and yet I have the beginning of a scheme. I'll have them perform on a murderous theme. It shall parallel the poisoning of my father, he vowed. I'll observe the reactions of Claudius from the crowd. Hamlet was convinced. The play's the thing wherein I'll catch the conscience of the king. Meanwhile, King Claudius was still uptight. The cause of Hamlet's madness had not come to light. Rosencrantz and Guildenstern were unsure, so now Ophelia had to be the lure. "Gertrude, please leave us," Claudius told the queen. "Polonius and I will hide ourselves where we won't be seen. I've contrived for Hamlet to meet Ophelia here. If love is the cause, it will soon be clear." Polonius told his daughter, "Come now, let's proceed. Here, take this prayer book and pretend to read." Ophelia was confused and upset with her role, but she knew her father was in control, and so she agreed, though deceit she deplored. Polonius cried, "He's coming! Let's withdraw, my lord!" Hamlet was despondent as he wandered into view, unaware of this intended rendezvous. His need for revenge continued to persist, if only he could cease to exist. To be or not to be? That is the question, he mused. For the meaning of life had become confused. The world for Hamlet had become a chore. To die is to sleep and nothing more. And yet, the prince mourned, I do refrain from the one final act that could end my pain. The dread of something after death inhibits the will. 'Tis this uncertainty that keeps me still. To die, to sleep, perchance to dream. Aye, there's the rub. It's not as easy as it may seem. A sudden movement caught Hamlet's eye. He turned and saw Ophelia standing close by. She stammered nervously, "My greetings I convey. The presents you gave me I must return today." Now once again his suspicions flared. "These gifts come not from me," Hamlet glared. Ophelia was confused by his change of mind. "Rich gifts wax poor when givers prove unkind." Hamlet now suspected spies everywhere. He felt betrayed, and Ophelia was the snare. "Where's your father?" Hamlet snarled in disgust. "Get thee to a nunnery. Woman, I distrust." As he departed, she let out a groan. "Oh, what a noble mind is here o'erthrown." The king dashed from his hideout. "Polonius, my friend, love! His affections do not that way tend. This is not madness. Hamlet's in control. He's brooding on something deep in his soul. Imminent danger as the outcome I foresee. I shall send him to England immediately." Polonius replied, "I have one more scheme that could explain Hamlet's actions extreme. Queen Gertrude is the one, I believe, who can discover what is making him grieve. I will hide myself behind her curtain wall. From their conversation we'd know once and for all." King Claudius agreed. "It shall be so. Madness and great ones must not unwatched go." While this intrigue was being devised, Hamlet beckoned to the actors and advised, "Speak the speech, but don't overact. Perform the play with my new words intact. Be not too tame nor too grand." Then he called for Horatio to lend a hand. "Help me observe the king tonight. Note if the words his conscience will ignite. If he shows no guilt as the crime is revealed, the spirit ghost is a liar and I will yield. But quick! Get you a place? Here comes the play." The queen implored, "Hamlet, sit by me, I pray." But he joined Ophelia, who was astounded. "The murder of Gonzago," the trumpets sounded. The prologue entered. "For us and for our tragedy, we beg your hearing patiently." The audience was hushed, awaiting the first scene. 2 actors appeared, dressed like a king and a queen. "It's been 30 years," the player king recited, "since we two fell in love and in marriage united. But I must leave thee, love, and shortly too, for I am sick, a new husband you'll pursue." The player queen protested, "Don't let me hear the rest. Such love must needs be treason in my breast. In second husband let me be accursed. None wed the second, but who killed the first?" The player king replied, "You'll break your vow, though I'm certain you believe what you say now." The player queen moaned, "Pursue me lasting strife, if, once a widow, ever I be a wife." Hamlet turned to his mother. "How do you like the play?" Gertrude answered, "The lady doth protest too much, I say." "Oh, but she'll keep her word," Hamlet replied. "Do you know the plot?" King Claudius cried. "What's the name of this play?" he continued in a flap. Hamlet confided, "It's called The Mousetrap. The murder took place in Vienna in real life. Gonzago's the duke's name, Baptista is his wife. But here comes Lucanius, nephew to the king. Look, he seems to be clutching something." Lucanius held the poison, from midnight weeds collected, with witch's spell thrice blasted, thrice infected. Hamlet could not keep his excitement down. "See how he poisons Gonzago for the crown, and he'll gain the wife of Gonzago soon." King Claudius rose up like a typhoon. His eyes blazed with fury, his face turned gray. "Give me some light," he bellowed. "Away!" "How fares my lord?" the queen tried to inquire. "What?" breathed Hamlet, frighted with false fire. All was confusion, courtiers rushing everywhere. The play was forgotten in this frantic affair. The cause of the king's anger was unknown. Hamlet and Horatio were left alone. The prince confided, "The ghost did not lie. We now have proof we can't deny." As the two stood talking in a state of unrest, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern arrived with a request. "My lord," Guildenstern began, "the queen is upset, and the good King Claudius is angrier yet. Your shocking behavior Gertrude wishes to review." Rosencrantz added, "She must now speak with you." "I will come to my mother," Hamlet replied, but the prince felt trapped and angry inside. "Let me be cruel," he thought. "I'll not be outdone. I will speak daggers to her, but use none." The two devious men rushed straight to the king and quickly reported everything. "I like him not," the king replied in a rampage. "It's not safe to allow this madness to rage. The threat of danger we must subdue. I'll send him to England along with you. I'll prepare a letter without delay." The two men nodded. "We'll do as you say." When they departed, the king continued to fume. Then old Polonius shuffled into the room. "My lord, Hamlet's headed to meet with the queen. I shall hide behind her curtain, completely unseen. I'll report to your grace before you retire to bed." "Thanks," replied the king, other thoughts in his head, for the play had revealed his despicable deed, and now he bemoaned his murderous greed. "Oh, my offense is rank, it smells to heaven," the king cried. "A brother's murder can never be denied. What form of prayer can serve my turn? Forgive me my foul murder?" he questioned in concern. "That cannot be, since I am still possessed of those rewards for which I did the murder," he confessed. "My crown, mine own ambition, and my queen. In the corrupted world this may be routine, but 'tis not so in heaven. There is no pretense. May one be pardoned and continue the offense? Help, angels, my wrongdoings dispel. Bow, stubborn knees, all may yet be well." The king kneeled to pray, but was unaware Hamlet stood behind him, his sword in the air. "Now might I do it?" Then Hamlet paused in dismay. "I must consider, and this action delay. To speed the king's salvation should not be my goal. If I kill him as he prays, heaven will take his soul." "No," Hamlet breathed. "This revenge would be cheap. I'll kill him full of sins when he is drunk asleep." And so the prince withdrew as the king rose to his feet. Claudius felt clammy and was white as a sheet. "My words fly up, my thoughts remain below. Words without thoughts never to heaven go." Hamlet hurried to the queen, as was her decree. "Mother, what's the matter? Why did you send for me?" "Hamlet, thou hast thy father much offended," she reported. "Mother, you have my father much offended," he retorted. Come, you answer with an idle tongue," she replied. Go, you question with a wicked tongue," Hamlet cried. This war of words continued at a rapid pace. "Have you forgotten who I am and your proper place?" "The queen," hissed Hamlet, "wife of your husband's brother, and, would it were not so, you are my mother." "You shall not leave," he growled, "until I make you view the contents of your heart and the inmost part of you." He grabbed her by the arm. "I'll force you to look here." "Will you murder me? Help! Help!" she screamed in fear. Polonius was hidden behind the curtain wall, and he heard Gertrude's frightened call. He was afraid that the queen would come to harm. "Help! Help, I say!" Polonius echoed in alarm. "A rat!" howled Hamlet as he stabbed with his sword. "Dead for a ducat, dead!" the prince roared. But when he moved the curtain asunder, Prince Hamlet realized his terrible blunder. "I mistook you for the king," he cried in dread. "Polonius, I never wanted to see you dead." For the queen, this sight was hard to dismiss. "Oh, what a rash and bloody deed is this!" Gertrude demanded, "Hamlet, my son, are you out of your mind? What have you done?" The prince implored, "I have much to impart. Please sit down and I'll wring your heart. Compare these two portraits. Open your eyes. The one I adored, the other I despised." He removed a chain from around his neck. "Mother, this picture of my father you must check. What a grace was seated on this brow. He was your husband then, but look what follows now." He grabbed a framed picture sitting by her bed. "Now look carefully at this one instead." He pointed to his uncle. "He's like a mildewed ear. A murderer and a villain who never was sincere." The queen interrupted. "My actions I deplore. You turned my eyes inward. Speak no more." But Hamlet's mood altered as he stared into space. A look of fear passed over his face, for the ghost of his father appeared once more, and his mournful words shook Hamlet to the core.
"What are you doing, Hamlet? Let your mother be. Remember the revenge that you promised me."
But the queen could see no spirit, just the empty air. Hamlet demanded, "Do you see nothing there?" She replied, "This is the very coinage of your brain. O Hamlet, thou hast cleft my heart in twain." Hamlet sighed. "Repent what you have done. Confess yourself to heaven, and my uncle shun." The news traveled quickly of this strange affair. The king was terrified for his own welfare. "That stabbing," he said, "could have been my fate." So Hamlet was sent to England straight. Rosencrantz and Guildenstern were his escorts, commanded to deliver the king's reports. They knew not the contents, for they bore the king's seal. Inside was outlined a royal deal. "Dear King of England, in return for being loyal, I demand Hamlet's death when he lands on English soil." Meanwhile, in the castle, near the chamber of the queen, Ophelia wandered back and forth, begging to be seen. But this was an Ophelia of another kind. The death of her father had snapped her fragile mind. She was wild in her attire, her hair was hanging free. Gertrude summoned the king to quickly come and see. Ophelia was singing, and she sounded very strange. The words of the songs she would oddly rearrange. The king was alarmed. "It's the poison of deep grief. This is desperate madness. That is my belief." He called to his servant as Ophelia withdrew. "Keep good watch of her, I pray of you." He turned to his wife, who was looking glum. "Sorrows appear not singingly, but in battalions come." Before the two could leave, they heard an angry roar. Claudius shouted, "Let my sentries guard the door!" Laertes had learned of his father's tragic death, and now desired vengeance if it cost him his last breath. He smashed the door, and with his sword held high, he bellowed, "Give me my father, or prepare to die!" The queen restrained Laertes. The king cried, "Let him go! I am guiltless of the crime. The facts you need to know." Then Ophelia returned with flowers in her hand. Her madness was more than her brother could stand. She held out her bouquet to him like a little child. "There's rosemary. That's for remembrance," she smiled. "Pray you, love, remember." And she let out a sigh. "Here are some pansies, too. Thoughts they signify." "I would give you some violets," Ophelia cried, "but they withered all when my father died." She sang a few verses, then once again withdrew. "Goodbye, my friends. May God be with you." "Kind sister," moaned Laertes, "you I will avenge. Your madness shall be paid with my revenge." The king declared, "There shall be justice for all, and where the offense is, let the great axe fall." But the king's plan would quickly be thwarted, for the prince's trip to England had been aborted. Hamlet told of the journey in a letter to his friend. "Dear Horatio, you won't believe the news I said. Before we had been 2 days at sea, a ship pursued us, and pirates captured me. Happily, my enemies were of a merciful sort when they heard I do them service in the royal court. Please send my letters directly to the king. I will join you soon and tell you everything." The king was with Laertes. "Do you comprehend? Your feud is with Hamlet. I am your friend. The man who killed your father seeks my life too." Laertes replied, "I believe your words are true." Then a messenger arrived with the letters from the prince. The king read them aloud, but the contents made him wince. "Hamlet's back in Denmark? Is there some mistake? But I recognize the writing. This is not a fake." "Let him come," roared Laertes, hatred in his eyes. "I have a plan," said Claudius, "to take him by surprise. We'll stage a fencing match, for you are highly rated. We'll leave your sword sharp. It will be unbaited." "I'll do it," vowed Laertes, who added in one breath, "I'll smear the tip with poison to guarantee his death." The king affirmed, "Our forces will combine. When he's hot and thirsty, I'll give him poisoned wine." So it was concluded. Hamlet's fate was clear. "But stay," Claudius muttered. "What's that I hear?" The queen entered weeping, with sad news to reveal. "One woe doth tread upon another's heel. Your sister's drowned, Laertes. Ophelia is dead." "Drowned? Oh, where?" Laertes cried in dread. "She was climbing a willow that overgrows the brook, hanging her garlands when the branch shook. It snapped in two as she hung her wreath, and Ophelia fell into the waters beneath." Laertes departed, tears falling like rain. The king cried, "I fear his rage will begin again." Outside, 2 gravediggers were singing with mirth and telling jokes as they dug holes in the earth. "I have a riddle," one said with a tease. "Who builds stronger than any of these? The mason, the shipwright, or the carpenter?" He laughed. "Oh, come now, don't look so daft." He continued to snicker. "'Tis a grave maker, I say. The houses he makes last till doomsday." Hamlet and Horatio were passing near and heard the laughing and the cheer. Hamlet saw the gravedigger hit a skull with his spade. "That skull had a tongue in it," the prince said, dismayed. "It could sing once and speak words profound. Look how this knave heaves it to the ground." "Who's to be buried here?" Hamlet asked in dread. "One that was a woman, sir, but rest her soul, she's dead. See this skull? 23 years it's lain to fester. This was the skull of Yorick, the king's jester." Hamlet picked it up. This was a dreadful blow. "Alas, poor Yorick, I knew him, Horatio. He would sing to me in light-hearted rhymes. He hath borne me on his back 1,000 times." Just then, a grim procession came into view. It was the king and queen and others that he knew. "Is that Laertes?" Hamlet tried to ascertain. "The youth is weeping and appears to be in pain. I wonder who he grieves for," Hamlet pondered in dismay. "Let us hide ourselves, quick, they come this way." He heard Laertes speak. "Lay her in the ground, and where she rests may violets abound." "What, fair Ophelia?" Hamlet was shocked. "Was this the grave that the diggers mocked?" The queen scattered flowers. "You deserved a better life. I hoped you would have been my Hamlet's wife." Laertes leapt into the grave. "This sight I deplore! Hold off the earth till I have clasped her once more." Hamlet was in agony. "No one should take my place. How dare he hold Ophelia in a final embrace?" Anger swelled inside him like a tidal wave. He hurtled forward and jumped in the grave. The two stood face to face, struggling for control. Hamlet cried, "I loved her. She was my heart and soul." The king roared, "This futile brawling must cease. Depart and leave this corpse in peace." Claudius continued with the evil plans he'd made. Hamlet had no inkling he was to be betrayed. The king requested he test his will against Laertes' powerful skill. So Hamlet agreed, though with a heavy heart. The courtiers arrived. The match would soon start. The swords were presented to the roll of a drum. Excitement rose in the room, awaiting the outcome. "Too heavy," Laertes fumed. "Let me see another foil." He chose the poison blade. To Claudius, he would be loyal. "The king drinks to Hamlet," Claudius called. "Come, begin." The two darted back and forth. "A hit!" Hamlet cried. "I win!" "Well done!" the king cheered. "Hamlet, this pearl is thine." Then he dropped the poisoned capsule into the cup of wine. The king raised the goblet. "Come, quench your thirst." "Not now," Hamlet replied. "I'll play this next bout first." They began defense once more, and again he scored a hit. Laertes merely smiled, a touch, I do admit. The queen raised the cup. "I drink to my son's success." "Gertrude, that's for Hamlet!" the king cried in distress. She began to sip his drink. "I pray you, pardon me." The king watched in horror. There was no remedy. Laertes was now in a frenzied state, and lunged towards Hamlet in seething hate. Hamlet felt the wound and was horrified. The sword was razor sharp, and he had been belied. Hamlet knocked the sword out of Laertes' hand, then grabbed it up. Now he was in command. "Part them! They are incensed!" the king cried in alarm. The prince charged at Laertes and stabbed him in the arm. The queen reeled towards them and began to sway. "What's wrong with you, mother? What ails you, I say?" "She swoons at the blood," the king shouted in dread. "No, no, I am poisoned," and Gertrude fell down dead. "Lock the door," yelled Hamlet. "A traitor's in this room." "It is here," moaned Laertes with a cry of doom. "Hamlet, thou art slain. The instrument is in thy hand, unbaited and envenomed, just as the king planned. No medicine in the world can set you free, and the foul trick has turned itself on me." "Then, venom, do thy work," Prince Hamlet roared, and he pierced the king with the poisoned sword. "He is justly served," said Laertes with a sigh. "Exchange forgiveness, Hamlet. Now is my time to die." All was silent as Hamlet looked around. In Horatio's arms he slumped to the ground. "They are gone, dear friend, and I will soon be too. To tell my story now rests with you. Give motives for my actions, tell of this fatal blow. Grieve for me a while. I die, Horatio." His friend wept tears of love, and so we too must part. He embraced the body. Now cracks a noble heart. Good night, sweet prince. I'll honor your bequest, and flights of angels sing thee to thy rest.